The shadow at its very outer onion layer, if you like, is the unacknowledged part of our experience. It is the depths to which we don't want to pull out to see. Now that may be because we can't see it, because it's not there to be, it's not shown to us. It may be because, for instance, a trauma that you've experienced when you were younger that is repressed. You don't want to pull it out to address with. And so because you don't remember it, you think you've dealt with it. That cannot be further from the truth. And what, through learning all of these different healing modalities, I've come to the understanding of this, which is all of these unaddressed internal problems manifest themselves eventually in the form of dis-ease. It may be cancer. It may just simply be, so it could be a disease as deep as cancer. It could be an allergy. It could be something that manifests itself physically. But it doesn't have to be that. It can also be a reflection. It can be a programming that happens to you. So if you are hurt because you touched the stove when it was hot, when you were 3, what happens now is every single time, if you haven't dealt with that, you come close to a stove, there's this fear that sets in. And you go, well, I don't even know why I've got that fear. But there is this invisible barrier now around this stove that might be 1 meter, 2 meters away, some kind of phobia. And you're like, but I've just got a phobia. But no, you don't just have a phobia. Something happened to you to cause that phobia. Now, every time that happens, many of us in an unconscious, I'm going to say unconscious, unawoken state, would simply go, I'm just going to walk around. But processing of shadow means that when you come up to something like that, you go, why do I feel like this? Why do I have this phobia? Where does this phobia come from? That is shadow work. It doesn't have to be when you're unplanned. It doesn't have to be when you're doing some different kind of healing modality. It is everything that you see that you have not acknowledged come to light. And whether that comes to light because you're accepting it and you can see it now, or whether that comes to light because someone else has come and said to you, hey, you know, this thing that you don't like approaching the stove from a distance, what's that about? They will come, and they always do come, always, into your reality. And this is what I'm talking about during this period, this time. These things are coming up more and more, greater and greater, with more intensity for you to tackle. And if you don't tackle and you resist it, it will smack you even harder. So what plant medicine does, for instance, it brings it all to light in one massive big bang. So when you do it and you're like not prepared, as Pete was talking about before, it smacks you the hell out. And you're like, what was that? What did I just see? And that's the importance of then having the guidance or a mentor, someone afterwards, to help you work through what it was that you saw. And every single one of us has such a unique experience. Yet so much when we talk about programming, that experience is traumatic. And the trauma isn't necessarily what we all just define as trauma. It's not just, okay, I smacked you, so you must be traumatized. It's your perspective of it. So like, for instance, I'll give an example of me. And this is going to sound pretty ridiculous, right? But I remember when I was at school and I was walking up onto the stage to receive something from the principal or whatever. I walked in front of the, whatever you call these, interns, podiums. I walked in front of it. And you're supposed to walk behind to accept the reward. And I was absolutely shattered. Shattered. I wanted to jump off the top of a building, and I was like, at the time I was probably 7 or 8. That was really real for me. That was so real. Yet 99.9% of people would be like, what are you talking about? How could that possibly be traumatic for you? But that's my perspective, and that's my experience, and it's my perspective on my experience that was traumatic for me. And so when I understood that, I said, those things are really, really deep repressed memory sort of things, because when you talk about healing, you normally go firstly to the things that you naturally just say that's traumatic because someone abused you, rah, rah, rah. But why would I go to an instance like that, for instance, to process when it's not normal? But that's the thing about trauma. It is not normal. So you go into it, and what did I find from it? There were certain things about like public speaking or whatever that I would shy away from because of that experience. And so I had a phobia, but not really a phobia of doing that. But that moment in time, that experience was something that needed to be processed and healed. And that shadow. I wanted to go a bit more into the mechanics of what the shadow actually is. And I think the guy who does it best is Alan Watts. And Alan Watts just breaks down and explains mechanics in the very best way, I think. And what he says, contemplate this. Imagine the idea that you are the most selfish being ever. You're 100% selfish. There is not a single good word to be said about you. Now, what does that actually bring up? What thoughts does it bring up for you? Okay, well, what is the nature of selfishness? The nature of it, I love myself, and everything I do is for my own advantage. Everything. Okay, cool. So what do I want? Do I want money? Or wealth, power, or a person? What if I want a person? What if I want a lover? Okay. If you say to your lover, I love you with purity, it sounds phony. Like, who loves who with purity? What's that about? But if you say to someone, your lover, I love you so much that I want to eat you, then you go, that kind of makes more sense, because your lover's going to say, that actually sounds genuine now, because it's like, yeah, I can feel that. So now if you think about that, I love you so much that I want to eat you. What does that really mean? I mean, it's not that I want to devour you, because then you'd just be gone, right? So what's the point in doing that? So what is it that I really want? And when you start to feel through what it is that you really want, you start to understand that everything that I know about me is in terms of you. everything I know about me is in terms of you. In other words, everything I know about me and my being, I only know because of my reflection of you, because of my projection in this holographic reality. So when we think about ourselves, who is me? Who is the real me? The real me is hidden. Because I don't see myself. I see you, but I never see me. So when we talk about the hidden or the shadow, the unacknowledged, then what we can say is that it is from that point that generation comes. What do I mean by that? If you think about, let's take a movie. Every movie has a villain. Every movie has a little bit of trouble in it, right? That is the essence of life. For the shadow is what gives the form substance. It's what gives life substance. If there was no shadow, we'd be all sitting here going bored as all hell. Going, okay, cool. Let's go dance around a bit and chill. That's not the movie we want to see. Now, so then we say, well, actually, the whole shadow thing, this has probably been the greatest point of contention between the shadow and the holy. Because you say, okay, well, shadow versus the holy. The shadow being evil, and dark, and not so good, versus the holy. So, does it mean that a good person is always holy? Not always. Because when we talk about the word holy, I talk about the word whole. Holy. The most holiest of people who have graced this planet, they're holy because they have reconciled their opposites to become whole. It's not that I'm just all love, awesome, just let's play around in the light, la la la, sweet. No, they've dug right down into the depths of all of their shadow to get it all out, to understand it, to acknowledge it. They have acknowledged both of their opposites. And we know the chaos that some of the most holiest men have caused to this planet. Wars and crusades, for instance, waged. Muhammad versus Jesus. Very holy men. I could go on and on and on. And even some of the later guys I show, there's levels of darkness that their followers all talk about, and they're just completely comfortable with it. Why? Because they get that they must be whole. If I look at it, if I talk about it from a different perspective, let's take a piece of embroidery, for instance. Embroidery being, for those of you who don't know, just a piece of beautifully designed cloth someone's woven, you wear. You always wear the front side of the embroidery. You don't, not many people, I mean, I don't know anyone who turns their clothes around to wear on, to show everyone the inside out, right? But the outside is all perfect. It's the side that you want everyone to see. Everybody only sees, including yourself, because no one goes, they might do this and be like, because we don't know what we're going to find inside there. And I can guarantee that every single being in this room has shortcuts, things that they don't like, little connecting joins, all throughout the piece to make the outside whole, showing. So what's the undergarment? It's the shadow. When we recognize that, we recognize that there's a duplicity about our being and our consciousness. If you think that your embroidery is the same on both the front and the back, you're being deceiving of yourself. But then you think about deception and you say, well, what is deception? What's the truth? If you look at nature itself, you say, okay, you could camouflage, lizards camouflage, butterflies who have two eyes on the back, pretending to be a bird, or the flower. The flower says to the bee, like my honey? And the bee says, oh, wow. Gets together all the other bees, I'm going to go fly around, get all the flowers and pollen that I want, do all sorts of crazy things because the flower was deceptive. So, to be is to be deceptive. So when we recognize this, we say, okay, well, let's take it further. To be is to be deceiving, okay, but what's truth? Truth is our perspective that we see out here through my glasses, your glasses. That truth that I see only gets more true when I see my shadow more. When I understand how I am deceiving myself and others. That is when my glasses become more clear. And so this is the essence to which really why it is we should be doing shadow work. Because as we see more shadow in ourselves, our glasses become clearer and we see more truth. The discernment that we have becomes more aligned to our truth. To process shadow, to integrate shadow, is about understanding my reflection. And what does that mean? It means that not only do I need to look at everything that I don't like about myself, all the behaviors, I need to look at every single other person and say, if I don't like something about you, what is it reflecting in me? Why does that press my buttons? Why is it that some people have this amazing ability to press my buttons and everyone else is just fine? Now, very often we just ignore it. We say, oh, it's them. I'm just going to put the blame on them. It's got nothing to do with me. So often done with partners and families, right? Mum's just like that. Just let her be. We know that it's just, it's unavoidable. That's just the way she is. And we go about trying to change them. We're like, oh, but you need to change this. This is what's wrong with you. How about this is what's wrong with me? How about we say, that reflection that I don't like about you, that's me. And when you start to see that everything around you is your own projection, that's shadow work. That is how you process shadow. So shadow can be processed every single point in time, all the time. I look at my cats and I say, what are you doing? Why are you trying to climb up me and scratch me, rah, 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 at certain points in time? Because they're reflecting a certain element of me. As I start to process that and I acknowledge it and I understand it, they stop doing it. And children also form for any of you who have children, they form an amazing reflection for your own energy, for your own essence. And you say, well, why are you doing that? Well, they're doing it because there's something being reflected in you. And then when you process it, you say, well, how do I acknowledge and integrate this? How do I make this become a part of me? It already is. We just denied it because of the whole duality thing, the duplicity. And the whole element of blame, it's something else. It's someone else's problem. No, it's each of our own individual responsibilities. That's a responsibility we have to self. It takes courage. Yes, it takes courage. But when you do it, your life changes.